So you have finally begun to see the world as I see it. From my tower, I watched you take to the skies upon Sithrax's back, and what a sight it was. My poor Vale lay bare beneath you, with no gentle mist left to soften its wounds. There were meteors carving fire through the heavens, undead marching in grim procession, and a swollen blood moon hanging wrong above it all. The land itself groans, you know. You can feel it if you listen closely enough. Sathmog's return is not subtle. It is a sickness spreading through the bones of the world. And yet, you came to me anyway. When you arrived at my tower, you did not come alone. I saw Tarduk Fogda step forward, proud and stubborn, bearing the will of Maleduk's kin. He was a good choice. The dwarf at his side was quiet and watchful. You gather strength where you can, and that is wise. I will admit, though, I watched with some curiosity as you stripped poor Bramsey of his belongings. It was practical, yes, but even now you mortals surprise me with how quickly grief becomes utility. You fed the door, cleverly done, and descended once more. This time, however, you learned. My traps did not claim you again, and that pleased me more than you might expect. Then there was Goldmoon. I wondered when you would meet her. She has always been particular about preservation. The tower matters to her in ways you may not yet understand. Still, you spoke well and you convinced her. Inviting her to witness what comes next was a wise decision. Allies are rare in places like mine. You descended again to the flooded depths and to the portal you could not open before. I did notice you tried that door again. Tarduk took the lightning once, and then again. I almost admire the stubbornness. Almost. Goldmoon spared you the trouble in the end, because some doors are not meant to be opened twice. Then came the moment. Jed spoke the words, and you stepped through. You came to us. Now you understand, do you not? This is not the first time I have seen you. It is not the first time I have heard your voices or watched your choices unfold. You stood in my brother's court, with Eledain in all his certainty, Hanawin at his side, and Dranath still young and hopeful. Even I was there before everything I would become. The guards were ready to strike you down as they always were, but Eledain stayed them. He always did enjoy a mystery. You told him everything. Sathmog, Azrahel Koth, the shattered future, the statuette pieces and the sword. I watched his face as he listened. There was pride, curiosity, and something else he would never admit. There was fear. Now you know how I have followed you so closely. We have already met. Eledain chose to help you, as he always would. He believed he could outmaneuver fate itself. He sent you with Hanawin and her dragon riders, and you saw the Vale as it once was, without mist or rot or scars. It was simply the empire of Eledain in its full and terrible beauty. You flew to the temple, the place you now call Outskirt, and saw it as it was meant to be. It was whole, radiant, and alive with purpose. In its heart stood the completed statuette. It took convincing, as such things always do, but with Hanawin's voice and Jed's presence, the High Priest relented. The dragon amulet was placed into the statuette, and it broke apart just as it was always meant to. 4 perfect pieces were formed. You took the final piece, the head, and completed what you had carried for so long. Then, as quickly as it began, it ended. My brother sent you back, already planning 10 steps ahead. He told you the pieces would be hidden well. He was right. He always was, at least in the short term. Dranath opened the portal, and you returned to my tower, to your time, and to a world already burning. You did not linger, which was good. You rode hard for Outskirt, and I watched the omens gather around you like carrion birds. The herald rode again, the sky cracked with fire, and the sun itself faltered behind shadow. When you reached the town, it was already too late to save it. Flames consumed buildings, screams filled the air, undead swarmed the streets, and cultists carved their faith into flesh. You did not stop. You went straight for the vault, and that was the correct choice. You descended into the place where Um-Durmann has waited longer than any of you can truly understand. You carried not only the key, but also the knowledge of what brought all of this to pass. You now know what my brother did. The Nightkin were his creation, born from the mixing of dragons and elves in an attempt to forge an unstoppable army. And I, in turn, sought immortality. Instead, I found undeath. I opened doors that should never have been touched, and the dead answered. Above all of it, above this very tower you now walk beneath, once stood a palace. His palace. Our palace. You stand in its bones now. The vault received you as it always does, silent and patient. The statues waited, the water flowed, and there, at last, was Um-Durmann. You nearly lost it. The guardians stirred, as they always do for the unworthy or the unprepared. But you remembered. Galio spoke the name, and the storm quieted. Twice you failed. The third time, you understood. You offered prayer, respect, and ritual. Only then did the sword accept you. And just like that, after all this time, you held it. Um-Durmann. My brother's final answer to a problem he created. You destroyed the Raven Skull, and I felt that as well. Jogridon's last anchor was undone in a flash of violent light. One less shadow in a world full of them. But you are not alone in your ambitions. You never were. As you turned to leave, you found yourselves facing familiar figures. Leonara, Quasimund, and their band had arrived, drawn by the same prize you now hold. Sathmog's reach extends farther than you think. So here you stand with the sword in your grasp, the world in ruin, enemies at your back, and me still waiting. The game is nearly at its end, and I have learned that it is at the end where the worst mistakes are made.